Welcome, everyone. Hello, everyone. As you come in, feel free to drop your name and your organization in the chat. It's always nice to see who's here, where they're from. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Nice to see folks. Feel free to drop your name and where you're coming from in the chat as you come in. We'll give it a couple minutes. Welcome, folks. As you come in, feel free to drop your name and where you're from in the chat if you want to. Love to see where everybody's from. We'll give it a couple minutes. I don't know about you all, but I am always searching at the last minute for my link to a webinar. I love the features now where it puts the link right on your calendar. Save it to your calendar with the link. That makes it so easy. I still, on occasion, have to look for it because I panic and don't realize I should look at my calendar invitation, but putting it where we can find it is super helpful. Welcome, everyone. I don't know if you can hear the noise, but our house cleaner has decided now is the time to vacuum right inside my office. So, all right. Well,
good. I can't hear any of it. I think you're good.
Okay, good. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Thanks, folks, for joining us today for this June webinar. No, it's only May. Okay. Trying to rush it along for this May webinar. I don't know where you are, if the weather's nice, but it's just beautiful here. So let's get this underway and maybe we can all step outside for the afternoon. Josh, I see you raised your hand. Did you mean to raise your hand? If you did, just drop something in the chat. This new automatic hand raising feature, I can never get it to raise my hand when I want to, and when I don't, it raises it. So just a few reminders. We will answer questions at the end, but feel free to drop them into the Q&A. Don't put them in the chat. That oftentimes scrolls by really quickly and we lose them. This is being recorded. We will send this out within a few days of this recording. I know a lot of folks like to watch after the fact. And then at the end of the webinar, we will provide some links, requests for a follow-up meeting, and a link to register for our next webinar. So the genesis of this webinar actually was thinking about how we solve our problems, how we make ourselves better as an organization. And so, the first thing is figuring out what's your problem. For us, next slide. Early days, we were soliciting volunteers through Facebook, through text messages, through emails, through Twitter. These are actual real screenshots of messages or posts that we put out in 2015 in our first year of operation. And so we would spend a lot of time, frantically looking for volunteers via Facebook. Then we also had a secondary problem. So once we got a volunteer, we would send them the instructions on how they were, where they were to go and what they had to do. However, we would have to send that same instruction over and over and over and over again, right? Because you have same rescues coming from everywhere. So it was a lot of time spent, first of all, looking for volunteers, like reaching out, trying to communicate with people that we already knew were interested, right? And then saying the same thing over and over to give them instructions, because a lot of our rescues were coming from the same place over and over. So when we were thinking about how do we solve this problem, right? We are in Pittsburgh, CMU, Carnegie Mellon University is here, Google's here, we are a tech city. And so of course we thought apps. Our first app, next slide, Jake. Our first app was developed by literally a bunch of college students, right? We won a contest that was sponsored by CMU and Google, and they put together our first app. These were, some terrific folks. They came into our office and really worked with us to talk about what our problem was, but a lot of it was reactionary. And we spent a lot of time since that improving on and iterating our technology. Recently, next slide. Recently, we hired Brad Fetchin as our VP of product, and he's our guest here today. And I've had a lot of conversations with him lately, and the light bulbs just started going off when I started talking to him, because the way he thinks and talks about approaching, picking a tool, deciding how to solve your problems, deciding how to iterate was so different from the way we had always approached it. We had always been, super reactive, kind of chasing leads or chasing what we thought was a good idea, and not as, I think, proactive and structured and process oriented as Brad. And I was super fascinated. So what I wanted to do is get him to talk about a little bit about how, as a product manager, not just for us, but in general, he approaches figuring out, if you've got a bunch of different directions to go, how do you pick a direction, right? If you need a tool to help make your life better, how do you pick a tool? There's a ton out there. And, if you're looking at tools to help you do food rescue, maybe we're the right tool, maybe we're not. But how do you know what questions to ask so you get the right product? Because you don't want the wrong one. It's going to be a waste of your resources, your time, and your energy. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brad and have you share some of your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. And thanks everybody for letting me speak to you a little bit today about some of the items that if I was in a similar position would be asking myself. So we wanted to keep this simple. Obviously, Jen mentioned if you have questions, we can answer them at the end. We try to take a quick look at what questions should food recovery nonprofits ask when looking for tools. So I'll cover a few of these. There's obviously many more than just what's on the screen, but here are some of the basics. I think first and foremost, what and where are the operational bottlenecks that you may have highlighted within your organization? I think that's a really great starting point. Secondly, what tool could provide the most cost benefit to your organization? Third, which stakeholders and audience do you need to serve? I think this is particularly compelling if you're starting or building on a food rescue organization. partially because you have different, sets of stakeholders that you need to tailor the tool around to help you become more efficient. It could even include your own internal employees, donors, whether that's, financial donors or food donors, obviously your volunteer network, as well as end recipients of that food. What are your aspirations and which tool will get you there? And then last but not least, what are your organizational values?
And I'm
Jen,
just
anything to add
interject.
there?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to interject that I actually, Jake, can you go back one? I actually really love that last question is what are your organizational values? That's so important because I think, especially for us, we're all nonprofits, right? We're all doing something that is value added, right? It's good work. But what is it that what are our organizational values, and how do we make sure that we're picking a tool that's actually going to enhance those as opposed to fight against them? We don't always think about that when we're talking about tools.
Right. Good point. Next slide, please, Jake. Thank you. So secondarily, what questions do you ask when you're considering what feature to develop? So this is, I think most product managers that are working either within hardware, product management, or software product management, the Food Rescue Hero platform is a software as a service. So whenever we get a request around a particular feature, somebody has a great next wave innovation that we can incorporate into the functionality. This is kind of like at a very high level what the team and I look to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis for us to distill down what's going to provide the most value to our customers and our partner network. So at a very high level with the vision, we really like to take a look at what that particular feature is and how that may fold into a larger product theme story. And any product has a number of different themes or key focus areas that are really important and are somewhat evergreen that you always want to keep a pulse on so you know how long term they're going to, improve and build upon that product in the market. Secondarily, with the roadmap, does the product theme truly need time invested at the moment? It may be a great product area to focus on at some point in the future, but this at a very high level helps us kind of distill and, objectively prioritize it. In terms of value, the something that the team and I are obviously working on, on a very consistent basis is how can we amplify the impact in those various product themes that are timely at the moment. Objective, how can we use a simple decision tree to objectively prioritize that feature, given, other items that may be on our radar, and then realize how quickly and predictably can we get this feature released to the market alongside high quality release and other items that may filter in there as well too.
Hold there, Jake. So I love this. And these are the conversations that we started having. And even before you were hired, when we were talking about what you were working on previously. And to me, this extrapolates to how nonprofits should think about where they're investing in terms of tools, programs, even employees, right? Especially, and I think every nonprofit on this call is going to recognize this, where, you might get a funding opportunity and it's this shiny object, but it is so far afield from, your main goals and what your vision for your organization is, that it's actually it's going to derail you, right? It's going to send you in another direction. And so I think this thinking, like, how does it fit into our larger theme? Is this what we need right now? Or is this something that we need down the road, right? Does this help us grow our impact as an organization? All of these are questions that we should ask ourselves when we start looking at tools for our programs as well. And, we do that internally now, not just in terms of thinking about developing our product, but when we're looking at, other tools for the organization. Do we need a help desk? Do we need a CRM? Like all of these other tools are, this is a really great sort of decision tree to follow, and it'll keep you true to your organizational mission. And I think that's really key.
Great, thanks, Jen. So I wanted to just give a little bit of context around the slide. So, and I'm actually really glad that Jen started off with what she did around how Food Rescue Hero and 412 Food Rescue started in the market. And it was very much like a grassroots effort that had very quick, meaningful, substantial impact in our community, which was wonderful. The one thing at the time the team started to rethink was, how do we operationalize this for ourselves? And so there are a wide variety of solutions that you could, blend together. There are also tools on the market that are industry specific to food recovery. So a couple of quick bullet points on that. So in terms of, how you choose a tool, these are a few things that came to mind, at least to me. So domain knowledge, I think, is a very important one. A little bit more context on that is the team who built your tool a peer food recovery organization? Do you have peer interests, meaning do they and you share common interests and values? I think that's a kind of a cornerstone to how you choose and ultimately land on a tool that makes sense for your organization. Substance, what is your appetite for a tool to have ongoing enhancements, something to be fresh and continually, built upon to grow alongside your organization? Overhead, would you benefit from an end-to-end platform that optimizes your work? On the flip side of that question is scale. Do you prefer a more manual tool with additional full-time staff, or potentially one that may provide some level of automation? And then I think last but not least, with user groups and just having your voice heard, is it important for you to have influence over future product roadmap and future product enhancements? That's something that may be of interest to you. You may just prefer to, leverage what's kind of off the shelf. But those are just a few high-level overviews into, things that you may ultimately want to think through and navigate. Anything to add on that one, Jen?
Yeah. So, and no hate on any solution that anybody's using, but one that comes to mind is like Salesforce, right? Or the meeting scheduling tool, and I forget what it's called. Where we use it for actually volunteer signups for our kitchen, right? But those are third-party solutions that folks have MacGyvered to work for their food recovery organizations. And sometimes that's what's available, right? Sometimes, especially, in the early days, there was nothing else available. But those solutions, while they work, are not going to grow. They're not going to evolve in the food recovery space without you pushing it forward and doing the work, right? You have to jury rig them to work for yourself. And then, anytime you need a change, it's going to be driven by the organization. And so I think that's, now that there's a lot more food recovery industry specific tools, right? We can see that there's a lot of benefit to that versus some of these MacGyver tools. Again, sometimes that's just what you got, right? For one reason or another, that's what the organization has. Somebody, a board member did it for free or gave it to you or whatever. And that's fine. But just if you have some choices, if you're in a space where you can kind of think through the options, just think about the long-term potential of a solution that you have to really put a lot of time and energy and money into making work for yourself versus one that is going to actually be doing all that development work for you.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Yeah, and I believe this is the next and kind of last just content slide. I think we'll open it up, but some red flags that I would ask that you consider if you're choosing a new tool. Platforms that are more black box in terms of they may seem like a good solution because you don't have to engage with them much, but that is one thing to potentially be aware of. You don't really have much influence over solutions that are kind of marketed in that manner. Perhaps platforms that are perpetually low or no investment from you. It may lead you to running into a decision where you have to re-platform if you kind of exceed the value that that platform is delivering to you and kind of inhibit growth. The third one is interesting, but I think partially somewhat relevant. Is a local software developer that may potentially offer to build you a solution for free. There's a lot of
on that one. And
yeah, right.
ours was free and then cost us $1 million. Like
Right.
we won a contest, they built it for free, and then to get it to move forward and be maintained is like a constant cost sink. So you
Right.
really want to be careful about that one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And then second to last, platforms that may be holding you to a proprietary network of either food donors or nonprofit partners, recipients for where that rescue food may go. And then lastly, platforms that will limit your food rescue organization's growth potential. And so I think that one is a little bit more general, but it's like if you were to think about, the 4 or 5 items that are above it, it's kind of all folding it together. I think at the end of the day, if you're thinking about which tool to use, just thinking maybe, a few years ahead of where you would ultimately like to grow your organization to be, it's ultimately going to be less effort if initially you choose the right tool, the right platform that makes sense for you. It'll probably save you and your team a lot of time and, be able to ramp up a lot quicker. So anything else to add on this one, Jen?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, if you don't want to ramp up, right? If you are doing it entirely volunteer and you never want to grow past where you are, there's tools out there that work for that. And then there are tools that are maybe not right for you, right? Like you don't want to make a huge investment into a tool if you're really just doing this as a like side hustle passion project, right? And
Right.
doing one rescue a week. That's awesome. We love that. People are making an impact everywhere. But again, I think it's really important as a industry that we're thinking about how we can all make the best investment of our time and our money because it's limited and we all want to see food recovery grow. Yeah, so with that, well, we will open it for questions. I'll just quickly pitch next month's webinar. Next month, we're going to be talking about food access as food justice. We will have some folks here from a local LGBTQ organization. Somebody's going to be here to talk about redlining. And we're going to talk about what it means to open up food access and remove barriers aside from just affordability for food. All right, great. So, what questions do you guys have for us, if any? I love the idea, again, of taking that product development lens and putting it onto your tool decision because we have such limited resources as nonprofits. And what I've come to realize is that in that product development space, you guys are experts at figuring out what is the most efficient and effective way to manage your resources to get the impact that you want.
That's right.
Questions? Anyone? I'll give you a second to think about it. The one other thing I would add is that just to go back to this idea of the free products. And again, I mean, I like free. I work for a nonprofit. I don't want to spend our money where I don't have to. But when it comes to things like having somebody create a app for you, I will tell you that things like the Apple Store and the Android Store are constantly changing their requirements, meaning that you have to have a developer fiddle around with the app on a pretty regular basis. Are there other technical requirements, Brad, that you can think of that might come into play there?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just having that. I think it's important to have a relationship with your tools partner, to make sure that you can have an ongoing dialogue about how to best operate. And there may be local, state regulations that influence what tool you ultimately decide to use within your organization. And part of why that comes to mind is I've been recently having some conversations with partners and customers that are based in states that have, food waste regulations that are starting to roll out. And that may ultimately have a or play a role in which tool you decide to pursue, because the platform will also need to be able to kind of grow with you, and as they need to report out on different metrics, that may be something that kind of ultimately plays into the regulations behind what technology makes sense to adopt. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. And especially because if we're thinking about California, for example, in SB 1383, like the reporting requirements that exist right now, may not be what the reporting requirements are a year from now as this implementation kind of rolls along and people get a handle on it. So not only do you want a tool that is going to meet the reporting requirements today, but that is nimble enough to change as the industry changes. Yeah, Sarah, so I think that your question about tools for gleaning organizations, I want to go back to Brad's first slide is what's your problem, right? What is the challenge? Is it managing volunteer schedules? Is it distribution? You really need to identify what is the specific area, and specific sort of pain point, what's slowing you down. I think the question you want to ask is, where is your staff spending a lot of time that they don't need to spend time that could be automated, right? Some things you want to keep human to human. For us, we made the decision we wanted to keep placement of those donations as a human. We wanted a human to be engaged in that, right? At least for the time being, because it's an issue of equity and justice and access and all of those things. But finding somebody to take a donation, that could be automated. So in your organization and in your operations, where do you need a human to be present, to be making decisions and to be bringing value that humans make? And what is something that is maybe rote, that you're doing over and over that can be automated? And that's the type of tool that you would look for. I don't know, and that's not to brush off your answer with like, because the truth is, I don't know if there's any gleaning specific, but again, I know some gleaning organizations that use tools like Food Rescue Hero because what they want to do is mobilize volunteers to go and pick up food from a garden or, transfer the gleaned food to a nonprofit location. But if that's not this tool, if that's not the problem you want to solve, then it's not the right tool. I see one in Q&A. Sure. There's a question. Find folks to take donations or sign up in form. Sarah, I'm going to come back to you in a second, because I think that my answer to the question in Q&A will help. So Selena has asked, can you expand upon what Food Rescue Hero app can do? And generally speaking, what is the cost associated with it? Yeah, so the Food Rescue Hero app was developed really to address some of those pain points that I described early on, which is Finding a volunteer to take a rescue. Our app works similar to like a rideshare program where it'll send out a notification that there's food that needs to be rescued somewhere, and a volunteer who's downloaded and registered will see that notification and accept that rescue. And then it will walk them through that rescue step by step. So again, that second pain point of delivering the same directions over and over again, that's all built into the app. So it just delivers that to the volunteer at the appropriate point in their rescue. The second thing it does is it helps volunteers or helps food recovery organizations manage weekly rescues. So I think the majority of our rescues are weekly rescues. So a grocery store says I'll donate every Tuesday, right? And we create that recurring rescue. It populates in the app for every Tuesday, and then a volunteer takes that and owns every instance of that. The third thing it does is it will find a sub. If that volunteer can't do the rescue, we spent a lot of time frantically last minute addressing volunteers who went on vacation and didn't tell us or told us at the last minute. So we have that find a sub option in there. And then the fourth thing it does a lot more, but the things that really stand out in my mind as somebody who kind of lived the pain of food recovery operations is it gets your data, right? It collects data real time. So you know what was rescued, when it's being rescued. I spent a lot of time chasing volunteers to find out what they rescued this month, right? And only to find out they never went or they didn't remember, right? So it kind of addresses all of those pain points. It does a lot of other fancy things. We've got flags that go up when a rescue's been in transit for too long. We collect photos of rescues happening. Brad, what else do we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big three, at least that you touched on, is that you can manage volunteers, you can manage donors, and then you can manage the recipients as well too. So I think those are kind of like the three big cornerstones of the platform. And then beyond that, there's a lot of interest from our customers and our partners on how can we help build stories around their impact through their year-end impact report. So there is like a business intelligence and reporting and analytics integration that will ultimately, make them more successful in their local communities as well too. So I think, from what Jen mentioned and what a few of the items that I mentioned and added on, I saw Jake, you came on. Anything else to add from you?
Yeah, what I would just want to say is if you have specific questions about the program or if it's the right solution for you, there is a contact. I linked the contact us form that you can fill out, which will generate an email to somebody on staff. We can answer your question, set a meeting, tell you much more specifically about the programs, and answer questions and figure out if it would fit your need.
Yeah, and there's other tools out there. Obviously, we think ours is the best because, we made it to do what we wanted it to do. But there are other tools out there. And what we want you to do is make smart choices with your investment, right? And to grow food recovery in a meaningful and impactful way. That is what's most important is we want to stop food waste. We want to end hunger. And that's why we're here. So if Food Recovery Hero, if Food Rescue Hero is not right for you, then that's great. I'm sure there's another tool out there that is, but we're always happy to talk to folks about what we do and if it's the right tool for you. Did I answer that? Oh, I think there was a question about cost structure. It varies. So we have a low threshold for smaller organizations that aren't doing very much, all the way up to a white labeled, we build you your own app, large service area offering. So we try to have something for every budget, and we're working on making it even more affordable as we speak. All right. Are there any more questions? It looks like we are good. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. I know we had some folks on here that are actually from some other solutions. So definitely thank you for coming. We never want to offer ourselves up as the only solution, where it's a really great community right now. in food recovery. So take a look around, but we do love our product and we would love to talk to you about it. And we'd love to have you as part of our network if you're interested. All right. Thanks, everyone.
everybody. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Jake.
Bye.